As a kid, one of my favorite parts of the seder was opening the door for Elijah. And as I would open the door for Elijah, of course, one of my uncles would sip from Elijah's cup to make it seem as though Elijah himself had come in and drank from the cup. Now, I didn't realize this, of course, at the time, but I did figure it out later. But I asked myself, if Elijah could make it around the world in the blink of an eye at everybody's seder, how come he needed me to open the door? Did he really like Manischewitz that much? What I'd like to talk about is the real reason why we open the door for Elijah. What is the real reason behind Elijah's cup and the lessons it can teach us? But let's start with where in the Seder we open the door for Elijah. There's a passage that says, Shafoch et chamatcha, pour out your wrath against the heathen. So what they used to do is they would open the door to make sure that no one was listening in, because this really wasn't the nicest thing to say, especially if you were living in kind of a heathen neighborhood. Over the years, of course, that became less and less of an issue when we're not really worried about people being outside the door and listening in. Rav Kook even said that we shouldn't say pour out your wrath against the heathen. That's not appropriate anymore. He said that we should pour out our love to the world and to make things better. So if we don't open the door because we're worried about someone listening in, why did we open the door? Well, this goes to the Elijah's cup. Opening the door for Elijah has its origin in Elijah's cup. There's a debate in the Talmud over whether we should have 4 cups of wine at the Seder or we should have 5 cups of wine at the Seder, depending on the number of times that salvation is mentioned. Instead of fighting over whether it should be 4 or 5, they said, let's drink the 4 cups, and we'll put a 5th cup on the table, and it will be decided when Elijah comes, which really meant when the Messiah comes, when there is world peace and redemption. So it was really a symbol of compromise. They said, we know for sure 4, we're not sure about the 5th, and so let's compromise on this one. And that's where we get the idea of Elijah. It's also why the mezuzah is on a slant in the house. There were some rabbis who said it should be vertical, some who said it should be horizontal, and they compromised on the idea of the mezuzah being a diagonal. That's what makes it such a beautiful symbol of peace. And that's why also during the Seder, the idea of compromise, of seeing the other person's point of view, is such a beautiful and powerful and very necessary idea. So that's where we have Elijah's cup, and that we open the door for Elijah. But the question is, why is Elijah coming to the Seder now? Why does Elijah come to every Seder? Why does Elijah come to every Jewish holiday and life cycle event? And it comes from a tradition that Elijah was actually not a very nice guy, and he was actually very pessimistic about the Jewish people. And he said to God, the Jewish people, they're not going to last. They're not going to have a future. They don't really care. And God said, the Jewish people do care. They do have a future, and you will show up at every single Seder, every single life cycle event. You will even be in the front row of every bris for all eternity to see that the Jewish people does in fact have a beautiful future. And that's what I love about opening the door for Elijah. It is a reminder to us that with a little bit of imagination, a little bit of compromise, a little bit of optimism, we will all have a beautiful future together as a people. I wish you a very sweet and happy Pesach.